On December 1st, before any snow even fell from the clouds, Ralph stepped out of his home. With his Christmas list in hand, the ice fairy was more than ready. His first destination was the local toy store, knowing the owner would gleefully help him gather most of the gifts he'd spent all year planning to buy for his loved ones. Just as he had predicted, the friendly man immediately greeted him when he entered the store. Within seconds, he brought his best employee forth to help Ralph. His name was Frost, and somehow he was just as excited as Ralph was to find all the gifts on his wish list. At the shop, Ralph found a cute teddy bear, which was perfect for his little brother. Frost informed Ralph that the small Christmas toy store most likely would not have everything he needed. The plush was in fact the only gift he could buy there. Regardless, Frost was ready to follow Ralph all over town, if that is what it took for the list to be completed. Ralph left the toy store. He was happy to have met Frost and delighted that he would have his help to find all the items on his wish list. Still, he could not help but feel worried. What if he did not collect all the gifts he was prepared to offer his friends and family? His thoughts were interrupted at the sight of Meg. The beautiful ice fairy was joyful and instantly began telling him about Christmas Fest. The festivities were held each year, and the great majority of ice fairies assisted. It was the event of the year, and every ice fairy, especially Meg and Ralph, looked forward to it every year. They were both very popular at school and well liked by their peers. This celebration was another opportunity for them to give back. Meg excitedly exclaimed,
"I cannot wait to see what gifts you came up with for everyone, Ralph."
Ralph had to keep up with his father's reputation. He always gave out the best gifts in all the town. After a few minutes, Meg bid him farewell. Ralph had actually had an enormous crush on her for quite a while. He never had the courage to tell her, but he hoped that the gift he had in mind for her would allow him to win her heart over. 2 days later, after a long afternoon of attending hockey practice, Ralph decided to take a walk around the neighborhood. He wanted to think about Christmas Fest. Like every year, he was part of the committee to organize the highly anticipated event. Ralph was quickly distracted by a melodious voice.
The weather outside is frightful, but the fire is so delightful. And since we no place to go, let it snow, let it snow, let it snow.
Mesmerized by his voice, he slowly approached the singer, listening to the song in awe. Even as it drew to an end, and even if Ralph had been staring at the artist all along, he had not yet noticed that the performer was nothing other than a fire fairy. Ice fairies were normally warned not to interact with them, but Ralph felt the need to speak to him. "That was beautiful, you've got a great voice," he told the street singer, dropping a generous tip at his feet. "Thanks," the stranger briefly replied, with a subtle smirk on his face. "Do I know you from somewhere? School maybe." "What's your name?" Ralph inquired. "I'm Hearth. And you're Ralph, right?" The two young men kept talking. Minutes piled on like freshly laid snow, until Ralph realized he should really get back home. He left Hearth to his singing, but even as he did homework later that evening, all he could think about was music. At the very first hours of the brisk morning, Ralph's purpose was clear. He would find more gifts today. He thought he would start the day without Frost and call him in the afternoon if he was in need of assistance. The first gift wasn't exactly something he had to find. Ralph wanted to bake delicious Christmas cupcakes for the members of his hockey team. He knew the school bakery would have any ingredient he might wish for, so he headed there immediately. To his surprise, Frost was at the bakery. It just so happened that he was looking for supplies to bake Christmas cookies. Once the two boys were done baking, Frost told Ralph that he was going to invite his girlfriend. According to the amateur toy maker, they would be grateful for some extra help if they hoped to complete Ralph's wish list in time. With the addition of the sparkly, gregarious Blizz, the newly formed trio managed to find 4 more gifts on Ralph's list. A toy for his family pet, a shiny snow globe for his grandparents, a brand new briefcase for his music teacher, who was his favorite, and a pair of the newest and overall best headphones on the market for his older brother. The 3 companions were about to leave the tech store when a familiar face appeared from behind a stand. Seeing Hurt, Ralph hollered at him. Once introductions were made, The four teenagers instinctively stuck together during the day. They all hit it off and spent many hours hanging out. A few days passed and the small group exchanged online, awaiting the next time they could all meet up and keep working on Ralph's wish list. Among four crucial presents, two very important gifts remained on Ralph's list that he knew he should start working on soon. One was for his best friend, Cycle, and the other was for none other than his crush, Meg. The Ice Fairy called Frost, Blizz, and Hearth, telling them to meet him at the town square. He wanted to buy Sickle a pet, more precisely a magical familiar. All year long, they had been joking around about penguins. Knowing how much she seriously loved them, that is the animal Ralph was planning to find for her. The only small issue was that he also needed somewhere to keep the pet penguin until Christmas Fest. Oh, and finding a baby penguin might also be challenging. Luckily for them, Blizz suggested they hike in the snowy canyons to find a penguin. Apparently, she knew where stray penguins roamed.
It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas everywhere you go. Take a look at the 5 and 10. It's glistening once again with candy canes and silver lanes that glow. It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. Toys in every store, but the prettiest sight to see is the holly that will be on your own front door.
Hearth was wary to spend so much time in such a cold environment, but his friends rapidly convinced him that he would be fine. His fire powers would surely be strong enough to fight the crippling cold of the ice mountains, let alone the slightly warmer canyons they intended to visit. Unfortunately, after a full hour spent seeking penguins, Ralph and his companions had not found a single one. Furthermore, Hearth was freezing cold. Frost argued that the three ice fairies should keep scouting the canyons if they were to ever spot a stray penguin. Blizz agreed, although she was more focused on Hearth's health rather than on Ralph's wish list. Hearth reassured them. "I'm fine. You guys can go. I'll fly back to town by myself." To the Fire Fairy's astonishment, Ralph strongly retorted that he was not going to let him leave all alone, especially not if he was feeling unwell. He would accompany Hearth right away back into the city, but Frost and Blizz offered to stay at the canyons. Ralph thanked them both profusely, and the group separated. While they were heading back, Ralph questioned Hearth about his songs. Music was the Fire Fairy's passion, and he was clearly eager that someone showed interest in his art. He opened up to the kind Ice Fairy, and their discussion warmed up Hearth's body and heart. They were almost back in town when the musician suddenly stopped telling Ralph about his favorite song. "Over there, a penguin!" The Ice Fairy nearly hugged his new friend out of relief before jogging up to the creature. Fortunately, the penguin was a stray, and the young familiar was looking for a master, so it was more than happy to follow Ralph into town. The issue of hiding the penguin comfortably still was not resolved though. For the day, Ralph could keep it in his arms. The gift he wanted to buy for Meg was a pair of glimmering ice earrings from the luxurious Winter Wonders jewelry line. Hearth accompanied him while he made the expensive purchase, even if he could not believe how much money the Ice Fairy spent for a girl. They went back to Ralph's home, brainstorming ideas as to where they could safely keep a baby penguin for the following weeks. Startled, Ralph saw Meg waiting next to his front door. The teenager was worried about him, and she came over to look for him. Ralph explained where he was all day, omitting his surprise for her. As it turned out, Meg's mother sheltered lost animals in their backyard, and the generous young girl was ready to take care of the penguin, especially if it meant that Ralph's present for Sickle would be perfect. Before the Ice Fairy got to introducing Meg and Hearth to one another, the Fire Fairy stated he needed to leave, then left promptly, barely glancing at the two Ice Fairies. Even if his Christmas wish list was almost done, Ralph thought about Christmas Fest every minute of every hour of every single day. He did this to the disappointment and increasing annoyance of his hockey team's co-captain. Berg and the other players may have been anticipating Christmas Fest like any other sane Ice Fairy, but their priorities still lay elsewhere. Finally, Berg summoned the courage to confront Ralph about it after practice. He carefully explained his concerns to his co-captain, hoping Ralph would not take his comments the wrong way. Ralph was not mad at Berg. He had a right to express his feelings and worries. Regardless, he did not need a reminder that the hockey championship was soon. Obviously, he yearned to lead his team to victory and earn them the coveted Snowflake Cup, which they had won 2 years in a row already. The team had to defend their title this season once more. Ralph took his role seriously and was slightly insulted at his teammates' implications. He was more than able of caring about 2 things at once. Meanwhile, his friendship with Hurt grew stronger outside of school. Hurt was actually giving the curious ice fairy singing lessons, and they sometimes dabbled with a little bit of guitar or piano playing as well. With each afternoon spent studying sheet music, laughing together, and sharing their lives through the bond that music created between them, the 2 fairies were becoming inseparable. Soon, they began meeting more than necessary, and even spent entire weekend days together without noticing as the hours flew by.
So tell me what's on your wish list. I wanna make it come true. Santa, 'cause I know you like I do. I've been there through the good and bad. Know how to make you laugh. Kiss all your tears away,
Once, they were having drinks at a coffee shop, and Hurt revealed that he felt uneasy whenever Ralph paid him when they hung out. He told him earnestly, "I know I'm supposed to be your teacher, but I would do this for free every day if you asked me to." With this sentence, Ralph realized how close their hands were, nearly touching, and how involved Hurt had been in his life for a while now. The Ice Fairy wanted to say something, although he did not know what. Instead, he retorted that Hurt needed the money, and he was glad to pay for his lessons or any time they discussed them. That night, Ralph was tucked in bed, but he was unable to sleep. He tossed and turned, restlessly battling a snowstorm of thoughts. There remained 2 significant gifts on his wish list: the hockey championship, surprising Meg with her present, and inviting her to Christmas Fest. And among this whirlwind of heavy thoughts, Hurt's face weighed more than any other image, melting away all other emotions. Desperate to clear his mind, Ralph began scrolling through his pictures. A notification pinged, and he saw that Meg had texted him. Against all odds, though, he ignored the alert and stared at the selfie he had landed on. It was an image of Hurt and him, and the Ice Fairy gawked tiredly at his friend in the picture, following the curves of his jaw, the softness of his amber red hair, the warm glow of his fiery eyes, down to the small shimmery piercing underneath his smiling lips. He hurriedly shut off his phone, with his heart racing, having forgotten all about Meg's late-night text, which he had not even read. With this thought, a realization suddenly struck him. He was in love with Hurt. Ralph was determined to get his mother an outstanding gift. She was a wonderful person, an exceedingly loving parent, who deserved the world in his opinion. As unexceptional as it might seem to an outsider, he wanted to buy her a very special blend of hot chocolate mix. His mother loved hot chocolate and drank it every day, so she had tried hundreds of different flavors and brands. This one was her favorite, but the manufacturer only sold it during the holidays. Ralph knew the mix in question was insanely popular, so that is why he planned on purchasing it early in the season. Unfortunately, the closest coffee shop to his home did not have any crystal dust hot chocolate mix left. That did not worry him too much though. After the 4th store he visited, he began to feel concerned. He texted Frost, Blizz and Hearth, asking them to search for the hot chocolate blend on their side. Unluckily, none of the teenagers could find it. Every location in town was all sold out. For the first time ever since he had begun checking presents off his Christmas list, Ralph was panicking. He hurried back to his house, ran up to a computer, and started frantically searching for crystal dust hot chocolate online. To his great dismay, he could not find a single can or even a small bag. No one delivered it, or they were also sold out. He was staring outside of his window longingly when hope suddenly resurfaced. What if he made a hot chocolate blend himself? As soon as the idea sparked into his brain, he texted his friends for help. Blizz immediately looked up recipes. Frost bought the ingredients he was missing, and Hearth brought them over to Ralph's house because the cheerful helper was needed back at the toy store. The morning was crisp and cold, and Ralph was prepared for a long and lonesome day of planning Christmas Fest. Seemingly appearing out of thin air, Meg interrupted him before he even started to work.
Hello, Ralph. I've been looking for you everywhere.
She began, speaking joyfully.
I spoke to the council, and they agreed to let me organize Christmas Fest alongside you. I'm supposed to help with any task I can. This is going to be so much fun, right?
The ice fairies got to work. Ralph was grateful for Meg's help, of course, and she was as lovely, friendly, and effective as always. Except the proximity of his old crush made the hockey player feel slightly awkward. Meanwhile, his mind was only more fixated on his current crush because of this situation. At the end of the day, Ralph was ready to go back home, but Meg stopped him. Out of the blue, she confessed that she had had a crush on him for months now. After spending such a wonderful day with him, she needed to share her feelings. Meg looked at Ralph, hopefully asking him,
So, would you maybe like to go out sometime?
The teenage boy was absolutely flabbergasted. As kindly as he could, he turned her down, explaining that he was not interested, without mentioning hers. Ralph was halfway to his home when he abruptly ceased walking. He spun around and started to run wildly, flying towards Hearth's place. Ralph pulled out the expensive pair of earrings he had bought for Meg initially. He meant to return them, but he had been suddenly inspired to do something else. Hearth, I like you, and as more than a simple friend. I've loved having you in my life these past few weeks. Merry Christmas in advance. Ralph impulsively knelt in front of the fire fairy, handing him the glittering jewelry, shoving out his question. Can I be your boyfriend? As his answer, Hearth pulled Ralph off his knees and kissed him. The ice fairy and the fire fairy were happily dating, but only Frost and Blizz were aware of their relationship. In fact, they knew Ralph's relatives and classmates would not perceive the love between a fire fairy and an ice fairy positively. The last gift on Ralph's wish list was still not ready. This one was a surprise, and Hearth was the only person who knew about it. The ice fairy's mother was pregnant with his younger sister, and he wanted to give his unborn sister a gift too. At the beginning of his quest, he was still unsure what to offer her, but now it was clear as day. He was going to sing to her. Ralph was leaving the school after hockey practice, and Berg called him over. He wanted to talk about the upcoming tournament. You aren't taking the game seriously enough. All of us have noticed. You're ditching us to work on your wish list with that loser fire fairy, and it has to stop or else. Or else what? Snapped Ralph. Maybe the team needs a captain whose top priority is the championship. Ralph retorted that his part in organizing Christmas Fest would not hinder his performance at practice and during the games. On that note, he stormed off, not wishing to indulge Berg's selfishness anymore. Ralph's father was not close to his family, and rarely spent any time around the house. Every Christmas, though, he became full of glee and always gifted the best presents. Every single gift was thoughtful, beautifully wrapped, and perfect. He was renowned for his extraordinary involvement in Christmas Fest every winter up until his death. This year was Ralph's first Christmas without his father, his family's first holiday season since he had died. At last, Christmas Fest came. Every ice fairy in town was there, and all of them witnessed Ralph's arrival. He was late and accompanied by a most shocking guest, a fire fairy. The overall disapproval of this highly unusual event was quickly dissipated as the gift exchange began and everyone saw the incredible presents Ralph had spent so many days gathering for his loved ones. Most of them remained displeased by Hearth's presence, until Ralph announced that they would be singing for his mother and future sister.
Merry Christmas, Merry Christmas, Merry Christmas to you and you and you. Fast away the old year passes, fa la 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 la. Hail the new year, lads and lasses, oh fa la 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 la. Sing we joyous all together, fa la la
The crowd had fallen silent, and a few people clapped, moved by the gesture. He was much luckier than most, and was allowed to express himself, so he would do it. Those closest to him had been supportive and were thankful for all the efforts he put into completing his Christmas wish list. And that is what truly mattered. Regardless of what the other ice fairies thought of him that day, Ralph was glad. He was with the boy he loved on Christmas Fest, and his friends and family were in awe of the gifts he found for them. The end.
Here on Christmas Day, when no one else, I'd rather be. Keep me warm.